All right, let's get into it. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the fact that Track 2 did a video not too long ago trying to walk back his statements that he made in the Freshest Kids documentary some years ago. I guess he got into some trouble because that particular phrase that he used, which was, it's no longer an Afro-American thing, and the Latinos took to the dance, I guess that got him into some kind of trouble. So he felt it necessary to make a video to try to explain that comment away. He uses another phrase where he says that he was really talking about an African-American dance form, and he was talking about Hertz dancers, but none of those phrases appear in that actual quote in the Freshest Kids documentary. So I liken his video to what Batch did when he made the claim or made the statement that Puerto Ricans had nothing to do with hip hop or the creation of hip hop. And a few weeks later, he came out with another video trying to walk that back a little bit. So I believe, it's my opinion, I believe that Track 2 is under some kind of pressure because it's important to some Puerto Ricans, not all Puerto Ricans, but some Puerto Ricans, that they need to see themselves at least on the same level as foundational Black Americans, or in this case, Track 2 is almost trying to put Puerto Ricans ahead of foundational Black Americans. And as we go through this video, you will see what I'm talking about. So what I want to do, I want to play the Freshest Kids documentary, the part that's in question, the quote that's in question. And after I play that clip, I'm going to provide a transcript of that quote. And I'm going to play the audio portion. I want you guys to read along and see exactly what he said. And when we go to his new video, when he tries to explain it away, you will see that there are some inconsistencies. Okay, so let's try to do that. Let's get that in.
Everything, all the breaking and stuff like that were considered underground. And Cool Herc brought everything out into the open. And that was like, say, 74, 75. All the underground stuff, all the in-house, all the hallway dances, and all the house party dances were brought out to the street. And the more they took it to the street, the more nationalities got involved in it. You know, it was no longer an Afro-American thing. The Hispanic took to the dance. Everything, all the breaking and stuff like that were considered underground. And Cool Herc brought everything out into the open. And that was like, say, 74, 75. All the underground stuff, all the in-house, all the hallway dances, and all the house party dances were brought out to the street. And the more they took it to the street, the more nationalities got involved in it. You know, it was no longer an Afro-American thing. The Hispanic took to the dance.
Now, when I look at that quote, he's not just talking about break dancing. As you could tell, he doesn't mention the word dancers or Herc dancers. You're going to hear that in his explanation later. You don't see the word dance form. He's going to use that word later, or that phrase later. What he's talking about as an Afro-American thing, he's talking about hip hop. He's talking about the culture of hip hop. It wasn't limited to breakdancing. The very first few lines clearly demonstrates that. He said everything and all the breaking and stuff was considered underground. He uses it again where he says all the underground stuff, all the inside, all the hallway dances, and all the house party dances were brought to the street. He's talking about a number of things, not just breaking. And he's saying that's an Afro-American thing. So this is what I'm talking about, how they're trying to strip away the notion that Black Americans created hip hop. But that's what he was speaking to. All right. So let's get into his opening line in his new video. I'm not going to play the actual video. at risk, of copyright infringement. So I'm not going to do that. So I picked out a few excerpts of that particular video, and we're going to break it down as we go through it.
Alright, what's going on? My name is Trac 2 from the legendary Star Child of Rock on 29. Original rocker B-boy. I just want to set the record straight. There was a documentary in which I was featured in called The Freshest Kids. And this happened in the 80s. A guy named Israel came out, interviewed me, and there was something that I said on that video. In that video, I said that it was no longer an Afro-American dance form. At that time, I was led to believe that the style of dance did come from a Kool Herc party and their dancers. Now, years went by. I did other videos. There was a hip-hop conference held in August.
Okay. Then he goes into, now you heard he said dance form. As again, he never mentioned that in the original video or documentary. So he's engaged in cover up here. He's engaged in trying to minimize the harm that he's done. So he goes into talking about this hip hop conference he went to, and the twins were there. And apparently a few questions were asked of the twins as to what did you guys do that contribute to the evolution of the dance. And after a few questions to the twins, they didn't answer immediately. And so when they did, they said, well, we didn't do none of that. We didn't go to the floor. We didn't get dirty. After hearing that, Trac 2 explodes and say, well, what the F are you doing here? And basically what I'm hearing from him, from Trac 2, he's basically trying to use the twins as a rationale to take any influences from those early B-boys from the Herc parties. But let me show you, in fact, the twins did go to the floor.
Even elements of breakdancing incorporated some of that. But the breakdancing, as you know it today, right, when cats were going to the floor, that's when you had the original B-boys, such as the twins, the nigga twins, Kevin and Ken, Clark Kent. I can't remember Clark Kent's real name, but Clark Kent was Clark Kent because he looked like Clark Kent.
You see all this shit come together. Then you got people like the nigga twins, all of a sudden they going down to the floor.
To go down on the floor, we didn't get dirty. And we didn't dance on linoleum. We didn't dance on cardboards. We danced on the cement.
Them was the real B-boys from back in the days, you know what I'm saying?
All right, you clearly heard that they in fact did go to the floor. So Trac 2, because he wasn't there at Herc's parties, he didn't know that. But he's using the fact that he believes they didn't do anything as justification to nullify that statement he made in a documentary. All right, so let's go on to another statement he's made. Let's do that.
Because I know for a fact the Zulu Grams, the Ken Swifts, they know where they come from because they come from us. They are the evolution of who we are. And what I represent rockers, B-boys. Rockers, B-boys. Because the blacks, they were called B-boys. We were always called rockers. Rockers pre-exist B-boy by years. If y'all say y'all was a B-boy in 73, rock has been hitting the floor from the late 60s. Guys like Rubberman, Salsa, Mexico, laid foundation to rockers. Okay? When we say rock has been hitting the floor since day one, that's just a fact.
Well, I hate to disagree with you, Trac 2, but that is not a fact. There are some rockers that have never went to the floor until they saw brothers doing it. Let me give you a couple examples.
first time I saw a b-boy, which y'all call breakdancing, was in 1975. When little T.T. Rock fell to the ground from an up-rock move. It was a 300...
Now, T.T. Rock was an African American. Let the record be shown that Batch, who's considered to have the first Latino breaking crew, didn't see anyone go to the floor until he saw a brother go to the floor. Let's move on. Now, a young Trac 2 is going to contradict himself because he says when he first saw someone going to the floor, he said it was an eye-opening experience. So, if the Rockers were doing it since day one, why was this so surprising? Why was this so eye-opening? All right, let's play that. Let's go. Just give me 1 second. Let me clear this, open this up back. Okay, 1 second. All right, let's do it.
It's coming together to create one dance because the energy that was sharing. But the same way we looked at them when they were going down as an eye-opening experience, they felt the same way about us. It took two different heritages to create one.
Did you show any?
So you heard him say it was an eye-opening experience. So he's contradicting himself. You know, the worst thing for a person who talks too much is that you're on a microphone or you're on a camera, because they capture what you felt at the time. And it's hard to walk back those statements. So you're going to find that a younger Trac 2 was more accommodating to Black culture than the version of the Trac 2 you would see in his recent video. So let's talk about some of the things that he has said in the past.
The godfathers of, that I consider godfathers of dance, of the breaking dance, has to be spread within maybe 2 to 3 crews that I know of. One is Salso. One is Salso. The other one is Zulu Kings. Zulu Kings, Salso. You have the CC crew from the west side. You have the Master Plans from 165th Street. At that time, you also had KC crew. The Floor Lords, Floor Masters, the only 2 crews outside of the Bronx, up in Manhattan, near 125th Street. And again, the godfathers that I consider godfathers of the breaking dance, you have Beaver from Zulu King, you have Robbie Rob from Zulu King, you have Vinny from Salso, Bobby Lee from Salso.
Blacks were the first B-boys and the first crew that was solidified. That essence and B-boy motion was Zulu Kings. First crew to ever exist. Period. And it was Zulu flavor to it.
Cool T, DJ Cool T and Mr. Lee. I gotta give them credit because back then they was the ones that used to really give the Puerto Rican shout outs. Because when I was dancing, he would come out and say, check out the Puerto Rican B-boy in the house, B-boy Spider-Man. And I would go out there and be dancing because, it was kind of rare to see because most of the black kids were doing it. And if you was a black kid and you was doing it, you was either down with the Zulu Nation or something like that. And Zulu Kings. And as far as the B-boys, the Puerto Rican B-boys, there wasn't really too many of us out there. So when they seen one of us dance, it was a big thing. He would be like, wow, check that guy out. Oh, look at that cute Puerto Rican. He cute. Look at that way, it's like looking at a little puppy dog, and you're like, wow, it's a big doggy. That's how they would see us, because we was new to it. But then after a while, they started downplaying it, not to just the brothers, but they started downplaying something that we love. Started saying, hey, you're chumping your hand. Why you still dirty in your clothes for? Why you always on the floor? and things like that. And I think if I was, if my self-esteem was real low, I probably would have never been a dancer.
Now you saw track 2 in the background. He didn't disagree with nothing JoJo said. That there were not that many Puerto Ricans in the beginning. It was a black thing. Now he's trying to paint the picture that, hey, we was there before the brothers were there. We were rockers. We go back further than the B-boys. See, when he was younger, he was telling the truth. He was more humble. But something is going on with him now. Now he's trying to rewrite the history. But like I said, there's camera footage, video footage, audio footage. It's not going to, it's not going to look well for him. So I forgot to mention in reference to the rocking and going to the floor. Let me play this piece of video. Now, this is King Uprock. I want you to listen to his experience with seeing breaking for the first time.
Dr. Love was like, yo, get down with us. I was like, well, let me talk to that, Carlos and them. So I was like, yo, they got this dance called breaking. And I showed them the footwork, swipes, and everything. They was like, we're not doing that. So they didn't want to do that.
You went and you got exposed to it, and you were open to learning. But
Yeah.
when you kind of brought it back to the neighborhood to show
To
them,
Bushwick.
they were like,
No, a lot of guys didn't want that.
okay.
FBI crew, which Tony T, he was the leader of the FBI crew. We had HBO also on those guys. But he was the leader of Born to Rock.
Okay.
Right? He lived right around the corner from Carlos from Dynasty. And I'm like, yo, Tony, you gotta learn this dance, bro. But I used to pop too.
Yeah.
So he's like, I like the popping, but what's that? That's called breaking. He's like, I ain't getting my clothes dirty, my sneakers all messed up. Nah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
A lot of crews didn't want to do it.
So do you feel that?
So when track 2 talks about the rockers going to the floor from day one, that's not true. It's not true. So clearly track 2 is engaged in propaganda. That's what he's engaged with right now. He's not interested in telling the truth. All right, let's go to another soundbite from his video. Oh yeah, before I go into the soundbite, track 2 made a claim in the another claim in the Freshest Kids documentary. And he said that Spider created the leg swipes. And I'm going to give track 2 some grace on that one because there was no internet, so he didn't know that the leg swipes were created at least 50 years earlier. So let me play this. Let's go here.
Swipes in the air that you see legs do. That was originated by my partner Spy, who I consider the best breaker I have ever seen break.
So here's a brother doing a top rock before he goes to the floor, doing the leg swipes. So clearly track 2 was wrong. But like I said, I give him some grace because he didn't know about the Mills Brothers. He didn't know that brothers been doing elements of breaking since day one. Let's go to this other excerpt that we're going to deal with next.
My question is this: what style of dance?
All right, hold up.
My question is this: what style of dance that comes out of a Cool Herc party? When I know that's Zulu King Spin, Rob, that Zulu King Spin, the sporadic footwork, that's a band party. They can't trace that to a Cool Herc party either. They can't. They can't. When they say, well, Zulu Kings, 1973, even Charlie Rock said that's a lie. In 1975,
Let me stop that right there. See, Track 2 has a colonizer mindset. He's of the opinion that if you name something, then that's when something begins, right? It doesn't mean that that's when the dance began. It just means that's when you named your crew. So that's why he puts rockers ahead of b-boys, because rockers call themselves rockers early, and their dance style that they did, they named it rocking, and then they called themselves rockers. Now, brothers were doing dances in the 60s, but they didn't call themselves the twisters. They didn't call themselves the tighten uppers. They didn't call themselves the burners. They didn't call themselves the going offers. So certainly your name is going to predate B-Boy, because Herc decided to give those dancers a name, but the dancers precede the name. But that's the colonizer mindset, is to say, well, I named something, therefore I'm first. Let's go on.
I seen a battle in Cortona Pool. They put a little tape in there. It wasn't a mixtape, it was just one record. Only to find out that there was a guy named Raul from Salso who pulled out a guy named Vinny out of the swimming pool. Because the following year I get to meet these guys. And they told me what crew they were. They were part of Salso. I asked them, who was the guy who was dancing? Oh, some guy from Bronx River named Beaver. That's where I first heard the name. I said, okay. Well, what was the whole dance style about? Oh, no, we were rocking. We were battling. We were rocking. I said, then why he kept doing the same thing and you didn't? He said because he couldn't evolve. That was it. Only to find out that my teachers come from the dungeon, and the dance and the crew were called Salso. Except for Batch. Batch always been Bronx Boy, Bronx Boy rocking crew. But his influences comes from Salso.
All right. So I played that audio clip because I went online and I found an interview with Beaver, and that particular incident came up that Track 2 is speaking to. So let me show you what Beaver said in response to that particular claim. All right, here's a portion of the interview. And this particular back and forth happens, later, close to the end of the interview. And Nora Rad asked Beaver, had he ever battled any Puerto Ricans? And Beaver responded, no. So this is his follow-up. This is Nora Rad's follow-up question to Beaver, or statement to Beaver. Oh, okay, but I've heard that you and a guy called Peanut once looked for a Puerto Rican b-boy called Vinny from the Salso crew at a swimming pool on Catrona Avenue back in 1975, that you were defeated by him. Beaver replies, that's been made up. I've never been defeated, and I don't know who Vinny is or who Peanut is. And I have never heard those names again. Let me say that again. And those names again. Most of those guys came in way after I stopped b-boying in 1980. What I see in that is a lot of people want, street cred. They feel if they mention my name and say they defeated me or taught me or, what have you, they think that people will respect them and give them the credit that they think they deserve. So according to this interview, Beaver said it never happened. He don't even know Peanut. He doesn't even know Vinny. So I'm not sure, basically is his word, Track 2's word, against what Beaver is saying. Unless Vinny has the tape, or let's say Track 2. If he has the tape, then he needs to present it and prove. He said, Well, I'm not sure what kind of tape. Did he say an audio tape? I'm not sure. Let me play that again. I think he said an audio tape. Hold on. Let me. It has to be a videotape. Let me double check. Let me see.
My question is this: what style of dance that comes out
Let's see.
of a cool herd party when I know what's dance style about? Oh no, we were rocking.
Let me go back.
I get booked because the following year I get to meet these guys.
One time. Hold up.
And they told me what crew they were. 1975, I seen a battle in Cortona Pool. They put a little tape in there. It wasn't a mixtape, it was just one record. Only to find out that there was a guy named Raul from Salso who pulled out a guy named Vinny out of the swimming pool. Because the following year I get to meet these guys. And they told me what crew they were. They were part of Salso. I asked him, who was the guy who was dancing? Oh, some guy from Bronx River.
Let me stop that right there. Now he says it's a, okay, now I hear what he's saying. He said it's a audio tape. It's not even a video. So, but he's talking as if he's seen it. I didn't catch it the first time. Now I'm listening to it. Yeah. It's not even a videotape. It's a audio tape. And so he's talking about, well, as if he's almost as if he's seen the battle. But he didn't see the battle. But in any regards, he's acting as if he was a witness to this battle. And so basically, I don't know if he's making that up, but Beaver is totally denying it. As you can see by what he, as he responded to Norrin Rad. So let's get on to, we're going to end this video real soon. Let's do this. Yeah, man. Let me do this again because I'm just thinking about it. Let me play that again because he said he witnessed it, but then he's asking questions of Vinny. Well, who was that guy? Or let's play that.
Named Beaver. That's where I first heard the name.
Let's go back.
Okay. They were Zulu Kings, 1973. Even Charlie Rock said that's a lie. In 1975, I seen a battle in Cortona Pool.
Okay, he said he's seen a battle. Let's break this down. He said he's seen a battle. We're going to break this down. So that means he's an eyewitness. He's seen a battle. Let's go.
They put a little tape in there. It wasn't a mixtape, it was just one record. Only to find out that there was a guy named Raul from Salso who pulled out a guy named Vinny out of the swimming pool. Because the following year I get to meet these guys. And they told me what crew they were. They were part of Salso. I asked him, who was the guy who was dancing? Oh, some guy from Bronx River named Beaver. That's where I first heard the name. I said, okay. Well, what was the whole dance style about? Oh, no, we were rocking.
So why is he asking the question, what was the dance style about if he was there? Does that make any sense to you guys? If he was there if he's a rocker, why would he be asking that question? It doesn't make any sense to me. Let's go on.
We were battling. We were rocking. I said, then why he kept doing the same thing and you didn't? He said because he couldn't evolve. That was it. Only to find out that my teachers come from the dungeon and the dance and the crew were called Salso. Except for Batch. Batch always been Bronx Boy, Bronx Boy rocking crew. But his influences comes from Salso.
That whole line is confusing to me. Because if you were a witness, why are you asking questions? If you're a rocker, why are you asking what you guys were doing? Something about that statement don't sound right to me. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I don't know what to make of it. All right, let's move on to this last statement.
The B-boy style or rocking, let's put the labels right. The rocking to B-boy style you see right now, globally, comes from us. Comes from us. We laid the foundation to a global phenomenon. There's nothing that they do today that I can't trace back to my generation. And I could trace back to the generation before me. So I am the voice of the voiceless. Why? Because I hear facts from people who not only were there, they were participant and they lived it. If they were outlaw, they lived it. If they were hustlers, they lived it. If they were salsero, they lived it. If they were rockers or floor rockers or concrete rockers, we lived it. That's it. That's it. Puerto Rican pride. It's Puerto Rican pride. Learn from us, as I learned from my past.
All right, so now you get it. It's about Puerto Rican pride. Now, what's interesting, I'm reflecting now on some of the past statements Trac 2 made. He said that Beaver was a godfather. Now, at what point did this battle happen that he no longer respects Beaver now? He said 75. This was early. I'm sure this comment, he said this particular battle happened in 75, right? So I'm not sure when he was asked about who were the Godfathers, I'm sure that was way after 75, probably in the 80s. I know it was in the 80s. I know it was in the 80s. If he felt that badly about Beaver, why would he mention him as a godfather? That means you hold him in high esteem. You know what I'm saying? So it's just something fishy about that story. I'm not saying it's not true. All I'm saying is that Beaver denies that it happened. We got to remember, hip hop is full of folklore. A lot of what we hear is folklore. So you guys make your own decision as to whether or not Trac 2 is telling the truth and whether Beaver is telling the truth. I presented both versions because it's basically Trac 2's word against Beaver's word. So clearly what this whole video was about that Trac 2 did is propaganda. Puerto Rican pride. No one, including myself, would disagree with the fact that Puerto Ricans took breaking to new levels. And they are, in fact, responsible for the global success of the dance. I never heard Black Americans trying to take credit for that. We only are upset by the fact that some Puerto Ricans, not all, but some are trying to say that what we did in terms of creating hip hop really wasn't us. Trac 2 is trying to suggest it was more Puerto Ricans because he's using the fact that they were rockers and the rockers predate B-boys. So they're more hip hop. Let me explain something. How many people have seen the movie Us? And for those who haven't, let me just give you a quick overview. Now, it's basically about a family, a regular family, doing their day-to-day things in life. And unbeknownst to them, there is another family that's identical to them that lives in an alternative world. And one day, the people from the alternative world comes from underground and confronts their twin in the real world and goes to try to kill them. The thing about this story is that I kind of view hip hop that way. If we believe the consensus is that hip hop started August 11, 1973, 1520 Sedgwick Avenue, right? At least from 73 to 75, when hip hop, the inception of hip hop, if we go with the consensus, and I know there's other individuals that precede Hurt, but if you look up hip hop, you look up break beats, Hurt's name is going to come up. So let's just use that for the sake of this argument. We're talking at least 73, 75. Puerto Ricans weren't around during the inception. I've never heard a person like Charlie Rock ever mention a Puerto Rican b-boy. Furthermore, this was the height of gang culture. So Puerto Ricans weren't going to the clubs. They weren't going to the Hevalo, the Puzzle, the Executive Playhouse, things like that. They weren't going to those places. Kool Herc was basically playing to an African American audience. So that is the real world of hip hop. So when Trac 2 talks about all the breaking and stuff coming to the streets and the nationalities took to the dance and is no longer out, he's talking about the culture of hip hop. The Puerto Ricans had a different culture. They had a subculture of hip hop that wasn't really hip hop. They were rockers. They were doing their own thing. They didn't have the DJs and all that stuff. When you hear them talking about what they had mixtapes and things of that nature. I'm talking about early on. They weren't doing the jams, the block parties early on. They weren't doing that. Definitely not on the level as the brothers. So you basically have two worlds existing at the same time. And the reason why there are so many similarities in, let's say, rock or up rocking and burning and all that, because they come from the same foundation, which is foundational Black American culture. This is why when I was talking about the rocker video and there was an interview with Dancing Doug, and he said he was talking to a member of TBB. He never heard the expression rocking before. And once he saw it, he said, oh man, we call that going off. Because it's similar. Just like in the movie Us, there's another culture or another people doing exactly what the original culture is doing. That's what was happening. It's definitely in 71, 72, 73, 74, 75. That's exactly what was happening. It wasn't until 77 when the cultures really came, the different cultures, Puerto Rican blacks really came together. But prior to that, it was pretty much segregated. So that's the real history about this so-called multiculturalism in terms of hip hop. The early days during the inception, it was foundational Black Americans who were at the head of the table. Puerto Ricans were doing their own thing, sometimes mimicking what we were doing. Another word we would say is cosplaying what we were doing. All right, let me do this. Now, let me remind my Puerto Rican brothers and sisters, since you guys came to the United States, Black culture has been the most influential culture upon you. This is why you speak the way you do. This is why you got swag. This is the reason why you dress the way you do. This is why the music that you love is similar to what we love, because you adopted our culture. We're disappointed as Black Americans that some of you will not acknowledge that. That's the disappointing thing, because it's so obvious that your culture, the Puerto Rican American culture, is built primarily on Black American culture. And you know what? In a way, it's not so surprising that you deny it, because there's a saying in the Black community, everybody loves Black culture, but hate Black people. And that's so true. And what some Puerto Ricans are doing right now is demonstrating that. When you deny the real influences that affect your culture, So let's do this. Let me play this.
When we get married. In the 60s, the traditional Latin music didn't match our hips. It didn't match our rhythm. It didn't match our asses. It didn't match our language. It didn't match our idiomatic expressions. It didn't match our relationship with African Americans. The twist came in. You know, everybody went twist crazy. They had twist bands at the Palladium, the home of the mambo. You know, you could do la pachanga. But one of the main things, if you don't know how to do the macadero, or you know how to grind, no, come on, give me a break. You know, although we liked the Latin music because it was part of our culture, and we would always listen to that when we go to grandma's and when we have the parties. I would say the guys my age during that time were into Motown, Marvin Gaye, The Temptation, Gladys Knight. I mean, from doo-wop, that's where we went. That was it. That was the hip music. I had to be hip. I don't know. You're from Brooklyn, you have to be hip. Young Latinos who are just teenagers, they don't have that connection to the mambo era. They have the connection to the radio, what they're listening to. Rock and roll, doo-wop, and R&B.
All right, that's the history of your people, Puerto Ricans in America, especially in New York culture. That's your history. It was primarily based in African American culture, and so the fact that you won't even acknowledge that the elements come from Black culture is very disappointing. All right, so that's it, man. This concludes this video. I hope this information was informative. If you haven't subscribed, please do. And I'll get back with you on another one very soon. Later.